AI is the word on everyone's lips at the moment. What does this mean for sellers? Will there be a need for CS teams anymore, or will chatbots take over? And how can we harness the power of AI to make us more effective sellers? All topics that I cover in my chat with Gautam Rishi, co-founder and CEO of One Shot AI, the first true end-to-end autonomous prospecting platform. I know so many people will find this episode helpful as we unpack what the future structure of a sales team will look like, the need for human interaction, and how we can be creative with AI to stand out from the sea of noise. Gautam's perspective on this is a really interesting one, so let us know what you think in the comments and let's get into this episode. I think there's so much to unpack today. So to start things off, how do you see the sales organization and sales teams adapting in the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to, maybe let's start with the SDR and AE function?
Yeah. I think, as you said, there's going to be so much change happening. It's already happening. I think we've had a kind of mini recession, lots of layoffs have happened in the last few years. I think companies have gone through a period over the last few years. It's just they've over bloated themselves. They've hired too many people. There's been a lot of funding. We're seeing a lot of layoffs. I think it's just being a lot more efficient. I think what you're going to see is smaller sales teams in bigger companies, but just being a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
So I think in general, where you've seen teams of 20, 30, 50 SDRs, 100, 200 AEs, I think those days are going to be like just a lot different. I don't think you're going to see those big teams anymore. We're seeing current market, we're seeing downsizing with certain teams already. It's not all like doom and gloom, everyone's getting fired. I think it's very much like, how can we be more efficient with the way we run our organization? AI is obviously playing into that in a big way. I think AI is the biggest shift we've had to our industry in the last 10 years. I think the previous change was cloud, then it was moving to remote working. But I think now, if you look at it, anything that can be automated, anything that's manual, anything that's repetitive, across the entire sales process, across any business function, is getting automated and removed with AI. Like, that's just a fact. It's happening. Yeah.
I think it sounds really scary. People feel uncomfortable to talk about this because it is the unknown. We don't know. We've never really experienced something like this before.
Yeah.
Technology, although incredible, can be quite daunting because of the power that it has and what it can do to shift the world as we know it. And I think with the pandemic, you always saw like an end to it, or like a cure, whereas this is something that's growing.
Yeah.
Does it make you a bit fearful, or are you excited?
It's the opposite. It's the opposite. I think there's a lot in mainstream media and like a lot of in social, which talks about AI is going to replace this role. AI is going to get rid of this person. Content writers are screwed. Marketing are screwed. Sales are screwed. It's look at it the other way. It's going to improve that process. It's going to make their lives better. It's going to improve what they do. It's going to improve their output. If you look at just taking it outside of sales, looking at education, looking at healthcare, imagine just being able to do like one-on-one tutoring with kids anywhere in the world based on their current standard of knowledge, looking at sales, onboarding, CS. There's so many. Imagine replacing all the boring, rubbish parts of your job, like the parts you just don't like doing. That's what AI is going to do. It's just going to get rid of all that really rubbish stuff you don't like doing, and now you can focus on the stuff you love doing, which is speaking to customers, selling more, closing more deals.
What about the people that do like those boring sides of the job?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's their specialty.
Yeah. I think you have to upskill, right? I think there is just a generational move. There's the Industrial Revolution. I think if you look at, is that a whole argument? I think it was Henry Ford who said, if we listened to our customers, we would just have faster horses. There's always going to be a place for manual repetitive work. Like, I can spend an entire day reading an annual report, or I can get AI to read that report in 5 seconds and it can give me the output. So it's unfortunate, but that's just the way evolution works. We improve, we get better. The people enhancing AI will move faster in life in general.
Yeah, got to get on the train.
You have to. I think the train's gone. It's already taken off.
Oh yeah, it's not a station anymore. We're moving, jump aboard and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
And I think that adaptability is really important. It's how can we lean into it and actually, as you said, use it to our advantage instead of trying to run away from it and going, oh no, we really prefer. There are some elements, like I'm contradicting myself. I think sometimes like the human approach and the more manual approach in some aspects are still effective and definitely have its place, but there are some points where you're like, how can you work smarter, not harder? How can you get more done? And when you use AI to your advantage, it can help you be efficient. You mentioned sales teams downsizing. What do you see the split between the SDR outbound BDR team and the account executive 360 closing? Do you see them merging, or do you feel like there is still a need for the separation?
Yeah. I think these are really, really difficult discussion points because it's not the SDR team will disappear, outbound will disappear. It will just take a new shape, a new form. If you go back 10 years, 20 years before email sequencing came out, like outreaches and sales lofts of the world, people were manually creating emails, response rates were much higher. People were cold calling. If you go way back, it was door-to-door selling, right? And now if you look at where we are today, it's a multi-touch, multi-channel approach. 50% that can be automated. The other 50%, you can't. AI won't be able to make decent cold calls for 5 years, 10 years is my guess at minimum. And cold calling is still a huge like revenue generating, results generating channel. So if you look at most companies today, 30-40% of meetings are still generated by telephone calls. So if you start looking at, so you will still need an SDR role. I think what will happen is you're going to see more full cycle AEs. Like if I give you, for example, one shot for us, we will be hiring only full cycle AEs, and they will be doing an hour of prospecting a day. But that hour of prospecting they do will be incredibly high value work, cold calling, super hyper personalized emails, social selling, video. The other 8 hours, 7 hours of their day will be engaging with customers, and the goal will be 4 or 5 hours of meetings and then 2 to 3 hours of follow up and planning.
Right.
It's just becoming efficient. If you look today at an SDR's workflow, 50% of that time is going through a data provider, going through LinkedIn, finding prospects, creating a one manual email, doing that again repetitively over and over again. It's just not a good use of like a highly paid resource. That person could be listening to calls, engaging with customers, and learning at a far greater pace than they will be just adding to sequence, which is what's happening today.
What advice would you give to AEs that maybe hate that outbound?
Yeah.
So a lot of AEs maybe like, I mean, it's a big generalization to say that AEs don't like outbound. But there are a few out there that want to progress into that role where they're purely just doing the closing. They're doing the demos, the closing, the negotiation, and they very much enjoy having that SDR team being those lead generators. Would you advise those AEs to maybe upskill again so that they can adapt and shift to this new change?
There's no one size. I think you can look at all sales, and this is a generalization, right? Let's just say all salespeople, there's 3 parts to it. Think of it as build, mature, close. So build being pipeline building, prospecting, heavy outbound, mature being incredibly good at navigating sales cycles, deal hygiene, qualification process, closing being, getting in front of the right people, pulling in the right team. So each one of those, you need a different skill set each company. So if you're a 20-person startup, you have to be incredibly good at the build part. If you're in a large enterprise, publicly listed company, you've got 50 accounts, they're probably existing customers. The build part is less. It's more about navigating complex enterprises, understanding like how to upsell, cross-sell. So if you don't like prospecting, if you don't want to put in the hours in prospecting, doesn't mean you're a bad salesperson. It just means you may be better suited to closing $5-10 million deals at a Salesforce, at Microsoft. Those people probably haven't prospected in years, but they're probably incredibly good at complex relationship selling, understanding complex budget cycles, pulling in and it's an incredibly hard job. Like you're not closing those deals. So it doesn't mean you're a bad salesperson. It just means you need to know where your skill sets are suited. If you really enjoy pipeline building and prospecting, go join a kind of medium-size SMB business. You'll probably earn more money because obviously they have to pay more because it's a riskier proposition. So it's understanding where your skill set's suited for, what size of company. One shot when you pipeline, we do a lot of prospecting, but it's still pipeline heavy, like book out 20 meetings a month, 30 meetings a month. It depends on size of organization.
You've mentioned, like we have spoken before we started recording today, there are so many different features out there. I think ChatGPT is the famous one, but there's so many that are coming into the market. How can we use them from an SDR AE perspective to be efficient with having that human touch still, having that personalization, not sounding like a robot that you're messaging somebody, building that into your cadences and having that personalized outreach? Is there a trick? Or if you told us, would we all be doing it?
It's so hard. There's so many tools. AI is so great. I think there's two ways of looking at it. Is let's not confuse outbound with just sending emails. So I think if we talk about personalization, you may be talking about how can we personalize an email? Email is one channel of selling. Video is another one. Voice notes, text messages, like in-person events. I think there's so many ways outbound could get classified. Email is a dying channel. I think there's no disguising that. I think response rates have gone from 5% down to 1%. So much noise on social. If you use this 2-word subject line, you're going to see this and this intro line. Buyers have switched off to email. I think it's a multi-touch, multi-channel approach. So yes, you have to be sending emails. I think where we're moving to is like, how can we use AI to look for intent within accounts? So 80% of your total addressable market is not even problem aware. So what's happening today is AEs, SDRs are prospecting someone saying, hey, do you want a demo? Do you want a demo? They don't even know they have a problem. Why would they take a demo? So how do we find that 20%? AI can be really good at finding those intent signals. Are they hiring certain people? Are they using certain tech stack? Have they increased their growth within their sales team? Look for those intent, then use AI to create, okay, what sort of message would work well for that person? For the other 80%, how can we nurture those in a really good way? Is that an SDR's role? Is that marketing's role? How can we use AI so one thing we're seeing a big trend of is C-level to C-level prospecting. So getting like a CTO of your company to prospect a CTO of another person's company.
Okay.
A CTO is not going to prospect, right? They've got a million things to do, but if you can create an AI avatar of that CTO with that voice of that CTO prospecting another CTO,
clever. That's
where we're seeing the trends. Instead of an SDR calling a CTO of a big bank, they're not interested in a demo. But they are interested in thought leadership. They are interested in highly relevant content. They are interested in the future of what's happening within their industry. And the best person to do that is someone from a position of authority. So that's what we're seeing. That's the trend. That's where we're going towards.
So you're catfishing your prospects.
Catfishing, you're catfishing your prospects,
Brian, the little SDR sat over there, is pretending to be the CTO of his company.
And that you can create multiple avatars of a CEO, a CIO, a CTO. And based on the intent of the lead, a different message can come.
Is that illegal?
That's a good question. That is a good. I think probably it is legal. This is an email being sent. As long as the person is aware that email is being sent and the data is GDPR compliant. So you let your
CTO know. You're like, hey, I'm going to be pretending to be you. Is that all good? And you could probably present it like presenting the outcome of it as like, I'm giving you a solution to the problem that I'm not asking you to spend hours prospecting. I'll do the job for you. I'll create an avatar.
And it's that what AI is allowing us to do is get a in-depth view of our personas really quickly. So I can say, what are the pain points of a CTO of a growth fintech versus what are the pain points of a leader in a CTO in a massive bank. So like, let's take a fintech startup versus Barclays Bank. Both will have hugely different challenges. So what's the value prop for both of those? Maybe it's compliance and organizational structure in a big company, and in a small company, it's speed, efficiency. And the value prop can talk to that. So it's giving you that scale of personalization. And I think the quality of SDRing at this moment in time is quite low as well. So I think the bar in terms of messaging, I can't remember the last decent message I received. Like
That's rude. I sent you one.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you're here today.
Exactly. That's what I mean. I was using you as an example.
Thanks.
But it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. It's cadences, sequence, and those days are over now. So the quality will go up naturally, and it will go up with the use of working with AI.
Do you think there's a risk, though, of everyone sounding the same, because we're all using the same AI platforms to ask the same questions, to uncover the pains of the prospect, to then say, okay, build me a cadence around that, write me an email. I know you say emails are dying, so of course maybe that's where like video prospecting lends itself to you more, because you're going to put your own words on your video. Are we all sending the same things?
We're already there. It's already bad today. I think if we look at like the best growth tech companies in the world who look great, grown like crazy, revenues are great, they are sending rubbish out. They are literally sending the same static sequence out to every single prospect. It's not industry based, it's not persona based. I'm talking about 90%. There's 10% who are doing it properly, but 90% are sending the same rubbish out to every single prospect. So even if you use AI and it's relevant to that pain point and you train it about my company. So let's just say I am One Shot. We do AI, autonomous prospecting. Why are we different? What customers do we help? What industry case studies do we help? I'm going to train it with all my information. Then when I find a good lead, it will be highly relevant to them. That's not happening today. It's just not happening. I think as much as people like to say it's happening, the fact is it's not. People are sending. And go into your junk mail folder and you'll just see hundreds of messages of, I hope you're having a nice day. Hope this message finds you well. It's nonsense, right?
I am well.
Yeah, I am well. And this message has found me. How did it find me?
Wow.
Yeah, that is the state.
It's so bad. We always say at Wiser, we try and get rid of the weak speak, which is, I hope you're well. Yeah. Like, how was your weekend? Yeah. You don't need that. Just get straight to the point.
Yeah.
So speaking about getting straight to the point, we spoke a lot around SDRs and AEs and those lead generators and generating new business. So I think there's a lot to be said around the onboarding teams and also the customer success account management teams. We have chatbots now for companies to be using. Is there a need for teams like CS anymore?
Again, it's a rapidly evolving role. And I think if you look at CS in the last 10 years, it was very much like, this is your point of contact. This is your person. They're going to be there. If you've got any questions, they'll be there for you. And that was sufficient 10 years ago. And then if we look in the last few years, customer success has turned into how can we onboard them? How can we make sure they're efficient? We're still relying on that one point of contact to say if an account is going to churn or not churn or upsell or cross-sell. It can't be done with that person. I think software in general, the market has become so complex. You're using AI now to look at usage. I can tell if someone's going to churn off my product 6 months before they churn. I can tell by the pace they've onboarded. I can tell by their usage. I can tell by how many messages they've sent, responses, how many times they've logged in. I can see what a good customer looks like, bad customer looks like. So instead of relying on Tim in CS to say, I think they're a churn risk. Like, why do you think they were churn? I just had a really bad call with them. It's like, well, the data's showing that. Maybe they were just annoyed about this one thing. So I think we're going to be seeing AI looking at a million other data points that, like with healthcare, you're going to have AI looking at scans and blood reports of just data that I think there was a report AI can see like cancer earlier than radiologists can. It's like, well, of course they can, because those are two humans looking at a set amount of data versus AI can look at millions of data points and it can compare that to good and bad and what they look like. It's the same with CS. Like, is that a good customer? Is it a bad customer? What's the data saying? And say, in this situation, this customer looks unhappy because of this. We should use this onboarding technique to make them happy. We should let them do these self-learning modules and things like that. So that's where it will head to.
So it will provide the problem for the CS team to be able to rectify that and still have a use of a CS team. Like you think that there is still a need. Yeah,
there will always be a sales team, an SDR team, a CS team. All of the current world as we know it will be the same. We will just work in a completely different way in much smaller teams, but providing more value to our customers at a lower cost to the company is what will happen to everyone.
And I think because I think people do say, oh, is there a need? Because you've got the chatbots, people can speak to somebody online and you get a response instantaneously, but you cannot beat the response of a person and that human reaction.
Yeah, 100%.
But as long as you're using it to your advantage, where you can say, okay, this is the issue that they're facing at the moment. I can see some flags within their account, and then you actually tackle that and have that human approach. Then it will be a lot more effective.
That's the optimum solution. So even before, I know Izzy is exactly this type of user. We've seen them churn because of this. She doesn't know how to actually. She's the best user, smartest person we've ever met. She doesn't know how to use. She doesn't know how to use this one button over here. And if she learns how to use that button, she's really happy using that. Yeah, so
not very technological.
But it's having that ability to know that across all. Imagine now customers have thousands, hundreds of thousands of users, and they've got an enterprise customer. So the only way to do this is through the use of AI, and we use it today. And I'm not pitching, by the way, but how do you know when you're prospecting? You prospect 2,000 people a month across industries, personas, sizes, with different messages. And let's say I'm a manual SDR doing that today. How do I know what's successful and what's not? Because I got a meeting with this one person, did I get lucky or was it the subject line? But if I can start looking at all of my data points, industry, size, length of subject line, word count, style of writing, humor, and now I can correlate that across thousands of data points or hundreds of thousands. And now I can see a trend. Now I know what works with what person. A human can't do that. It's impossible.
Yeah. No, it would also take so much
it would take
time.
it, and then it'd be out of date by then.
Exactly. Yeah. They're not there anymore. They've moved on. Leadership and management.
Yeah.
That's already shifted in the past couple of years. We can see people's management styles changing post-pandemic.
Yeah.
How do you see that shifting?
I think we've gone through a few different styles in the last few years. I think there was this kind of ultra aggressive, hardcore management style. And then I think the last 5 years, it became more employee centric. I think people were more sensitive around employees and listening to them. I think it became too soft. I think employees, it just became too easy for them. Onboardings were really slow. Expectations of results were really slow. I think we're going to get to somewhere in the middle of that in the next few years. But again, talking about AI, I'm not specific about AI, but software in general. I've managed, probably 200-300 reps over the last kind of 10 years. It's incredibly hard. Every single one of those reps has a different personality. Every single one of those reps learns in a different way. Every one of them has a different strength, has a different weakness. So my job as a leader, a good number of reps you can manage as a leader is 6 people. I think there was a study, maybe 6, 8. I think at one point I managed 20. And when I'm managing 20 people, it's unmanageable. The deal reviews are poor. The leadership, their progression is really poor. The ability to train them is really poor, and you rush it. So I think again, looking at the current state of AIs, I can see what work should I be doing with each individual part of my team? How can I pair different parts of my organization together where their strengths and weaknesses will work better with them? So those sorts of things, again, AI is going to play a huge part in that. So the traditional, I'm going to manage Izzy, I'm going to work with her every week, we're going to do our one-on-ones every week, I'm going to make her a great employee. that way of working is not going to work. There's so many better ways of doing things that we don't have to think in that traditional way anymore.
Do you think one-to-ones will stop?
I hate one-to-ones on a weekly basis. I think like one-to-ones, it's just pointless. I think like even in sales, you do a one-to-one. So what happened with this deal? Did it move on? Did you speak to that person? One-to-ones are really good. I would say maybe on a monthly basis versus a weekly basis.
Okay.
One-to-ones are good in sales if you want to kind of like have that micromanagement culture, like how many calls did you make? We've got the dashboards, we've got the reviews. Yeah, I think it's a good question. I actually don't know the answer. Will one-to-ones stop? That's a good question. What do you think? I'm interested to know back to you.
So I think from what you've said, it sounds like you'll be using AI to find out all that information from your team. So to answer your flow, they will stop because you won't need them, because you'll have all that information through the data points. You'll know where they're struggling. You'll know what areas they need to improve on, and you can just ping that over on an email or maybe in passing in the office. But what I disagree with, and I guess my perspective would be, I don't think that they should stop. I love one-to-ones. I think that they should happen every week. Yep. My reasoning is because you are not just doing a one-to-one to talk about sales. You're there to be a manager and talk about them as people. And that's something that AI can never have and can never replace, is that human touch, similar to what we were saying with the CS teams and their prospects and their clients. I think that there's so many factors that play into success outside of work that as a manager, you need to be unpacking that weekly or bi-weekly to understand how you can help your team member grow to achieve those sales quotas and those targets. And the data side will never be able to show you that. Yeah. So that would be my answer, but I don't know if good. You have...
I think that's good if you've got good leaders. I think having good leaders, you can unpack your performance, but not all leaders are good, right? And a lot of leaders are inexperienced and they're like maybe on their way up. And so it doesn't mean they're a bad leader, it just means they're inexperienced at leading. So I think coming back to that, it's like if I'm managing a team of 10 people and all of those 10 people, if something's telling me Izzy needs, would be great to, mentor her on these 3 areas. And I'm like, I've got 20 years of experience. I know exactly, I've gone through that pain.
Right. Yeah.
Now I can maybe teach or train in a specific way versus guessing. I think I've gone through lots of reps where the performance has been low. And I don't know, there's this famous saying, the criticism sandwich. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No, I've not.
Where if you want to give someone some criticism,
oh, the shit sandwich.
Yeah, shit. Okay. I use criticism. I was maybe taught I was much more polite than you are. And it's like compliment, give them the criticism, and then compliment again. And I was like, brilliant. That's a really nice way there.
Yeah.
And after doing this 20 times with 20 different people, I learned that all they actually listened to was the compliment. And they left that Gautam says I'm doing such a great job. And I was like... In my head, that conversation went a completely different way, but they pick up on, they just said I'm just ramping really well. And actually the words were, you haven't closed anything in a year, you're not doing any performance. But so I think having the guidance to make it clear, give that feedback. I've done it. I probably still do it to this day. I'm not direct enough with some of that feedback. So if you have something there to assist people to make it crystal clear, direct, pips are real, people go on performance. I've put people on performance reviews, and not in a way to get rid of them, in a way to improve them. So I think if we can look at that and avoid that process up front, that would be just absolutely amazing.
Is that to your point that you think leaders have become soft recently, that they're not being direct enough?
Yeah, I think that's everywhere. Yeah, I think everyone was going through hiring sprees. It was not letting go of people. Growth tech companies to prove to the markets that they were a super hot hyper growth company had to prove they were hiring. You can't be a hyper growth company if you stay flat at your employee rate every year. So they had to show we've gone from 500 employees to 700 to 900. Even though they didn't need them, it was to prove to the market. And I think those times are changing. It's how can you be more efficient? How can you be more lean? So those days are gone. So you will see the first, $1 billion 10 employee company in the next 5 years for sure, with the use of AI. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait for that moment to see. We're on the train. We're heading that way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Izzy.
this conversation today. It's been really, really insightful. It's been really interesting as well to learn about things that I haven't really thought about. And actually, whereas I've been probably quite skeptical with it and saying, no, we don't need to use it. The human approach is the best way. But to your point of let's utilize it to the best of our abilities and make ourselves efficient and effective. I think we'll see the world of work changing. And I'm excited for 2030 now.
Let's go. Let's
go. But the end of each episode, as I ask every guest that comes on Sales Unfiltered, as we are showcasing the unfiltered, vulnerable, truthful side of sales, the fact that not every day goes well. There are many ups and downs in sales. What is one failure or challenge that you faced in your career that's really helped shape you to where you are today?
It's a tough one. I think failures, like you have failures weekly, monthly. I'd say it's probably more for recent. I've been quite lucky. I'm trying to not make this sound like a humble brag.
I have no failures.
I think like I've had, during my sales career, I started as an SDR, AE, enterprise AE, sales director, VP, earnings up year on year on year. And you believe your own hype. You start to believe you're really good, and then you start managing people. And you start thinking you are really good at sales. You're really good at managing people. You're really good at understanding tech and closing big deals.
Did you go at home and look at yourself in the mirror?
I would say every day. I tell my wife, like, shut up, you're shit. And I think what happened when I left that life to start a company, and all of that was out the window, you start looking back and like, actually, did I just work for really great companies? And did I join those companies at a really good time? Was I really fortunate? And so I kind of went through this, especially starting One Shot, the first 18 months, we were losing money. We had to let go of people. The product wasn't working. We signed customers. They were deeply unhappy. And so when you go through that, and your personal savings had completely gone, 2 kids, and it was a shit show. And so when you go through that experience, you realize, number one, you don't know anything, and you realize the newfound respect you have for founders and the people who've built businesses to give you that job. What they've gone through, every single one of them has gone through to be able to employ people, was huge for me. Not taking anything for granted, a reappreciation of customers, reappreciation of selling, different channels, teams. I think where I thought maybe I was like really good, I think like you really look at the team and you're like, well, you need a massive successful team. So I think, spending all my savings, having the kids, losing customers, going through that over the last few years has been, incredibly humbling. And you hear all the stuff, don't you? Like, you've got to see it through. You've got to see it through. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and there is. But going through that period, you don't see it. Right? And,
you're seeing the light now.
There's some light now. There's some lights.
Your wife is hating you a little bit less now.
Yeah, just a little bit. She's always hated me, so it's not that bad.
It's just daily.
Exactly.
You mentioned that it's like throughout your career, you have always felt like you were good and growing, and then you get to this point. What would you now look at yourself as a founder? What would you see are your strengths, and what makes you look in the mirror and go,
he's
you're good at that.
He's good. It really, I think with me, I will never give up. Literally, that's it. It's just that. And I think what I've learned is that I can take quite a few punches and kind of come back up, which sounds really cheesy. But I think going through and going through any job, I think what I've learned is to disattach from failure a lot more. I've probably become quite cheesy in that respect, where like I look at a failure now, I'm like, must be a really big win around the corner. If something bad's happened. So I think I'm optimistic but like naturally, I think I've become even more. But I've also become like, okay, things are really good. It's time to and there's a failure coming around the corner. So I think I'm
ready.
A bit more balanced, but I'm still highs and lows. I definitely, there's people that stay consistent. I'm not one of those. But I think it's just like, just roll with it. Don't give up. Believe in your dreams. All that good stuff.
All the cheese.
All the cheese. It's there for a reason.
I'm lactose intolerant, so can we stop with all the cheese, please? It's a bit overwhelming.
feel it coming up.
Feeling really sick.
Yeah.
I think not to go against anybody that's consistent. I think go you, it's really good.
Yeah.
But I actually think that turbulent momentum and like going up and down and the failures are great because it teaches you a lesson. Yeah. And if you're always consistently good,
we don't like those people.
Well, you're never growing, are you? And actually, it is boring. Yeah. You're there for a ride. Yeah. You're never going to learn from your mistakes. Yeah. So you're probably a lot more well-rounded having those failures around the corner and learning.
It's okay to over the last 2 years, close to running out, we were finally about to get some VC funding. They said no at the last minute. And like for a week, you're just broken. You're just like, how do you bounce back from that? Like, we've only got 4 months left. They said no, the product, and then you go through that. Like, how am I going to pay myself? The mortgage rates are going up. And then, but you just find a way. You just find this way of just getting through, and it kind of works.
I'm so excited to see you keep going and keep pushing to the light at the end of the tunnel, because One Shot AI is going to be such a huge success. Thank you so much for coming on today,
Thank you, Izzy. Thank you.
Really enjoyed the conversation.
Cheers. Loved it.
Thanks so much for listening. Check out the channel for more episodes like this one, and we'll see you next week.